Pocket badge number 9001. Today's date is 5/22/20. The time is approximately 20:48 hours. All of our use of force options have been extorted. He has been sprayed twice. Chemical agents were deployed twice. He's still not coming out. We are going to send in the cell extraction team. You guys are to use the least amount of force possible to restrain the inmate. The inmate today is inmate Perry, ADC number 142170.
What exactly is the definition of a fair fight? Well, that will depend on what you are talking about. If you mean, what is a fair fight in the streets when you are fighting for your life, or for the life of a loved one against a crackhead hell-bent on ruining all of your weekends, then a fair fight in that case is you and your high-powered pistol loaded with 124 grain, full metal jacket hollow points against the perpetrator. If you are carrying your beloved goddaughter in your arms, as I am apt to do, then it is also fair to expend about 15 rounds just to make sure he's not some kind of fucking zombie who's going to get back up on his feet and scream at my baby girl. I have watched the movie I Am Legend about 150 times, and I've learned my fucking lesson. I carry earplugs for my goddaughter just for that scenario. If, however, we are talking about a fair fight within the confines of ADCRR, while one is engaged in performing one's duties and are attacked by a convict or convicts hell-bent on destroying our career, by taking away our means of employment by either killing us or destroying our means to continue our career with permanent injury, then there is absolutely no room in this conversation for the term fair fight to be considered. Recently, and by recently, I mean both very recent and recently, as in the past 7 years or so, staff assaults have increased tremendously because of departmental negligence and incompetency by those running it. This administration has methodically snuck higher custody inmates and highly assaultive convicts into the lower custodies to roam freely amongst our severely understaffed facilities. They have done so under the cover of deceit and by inventing new terminology like overrides and step-down programs to accomplish these nefarious and lethal decisions. It may very well appear that they are getting away with it because no matter how many times we present this to the public with media exposure, nothing gets accomplished. If this is to be the continuing case, then staff must make the conscious decision to adapt and take matters unto their own hands, and as a group, accept that we are at war. We are at war with a maniacal administration that cares not what happens to its employees, no matter how many cotton candy statements they shove down our throats saying that they care. Fortunately for us, war is rather simple and violent. Ideals are not. If this administration has already shown you that nothing will be done if a convict severely injures you or kills you, then under the rules of war, we must either accept those terms or bail out. If we decide to stay and put up with this condition of war, then we must adapt. The rules of war are extremely simple, and when correctly applied, transfers fear back towards the hostile forces and places you in an advantageous position where at first there was none. This administration has already declared war by allowing higher custody inmates unto lower custody yards where they are continually assaulting our staff and other convicts without repercussions for their violent actions. That is war, and therefore anything goes when it comes to protecting your life when surrounded by assassins that have been authorized by this administration to assault you. Case in point. Here follows a true story no matter how difficult it is to believe it ever transpired. In 1996, while working at the then-named Special Management Unit 2, the Department of Corrections had decided to clean up the yards of security threat group gang members by rounding them up from where they roamed free and placing them within the maximum custody conditions of the newly opened Level 5 unit. The convicts were furious and rebelled. Every day, all day, the air was filled with radio traffic from officers requesting assistance for backup because of the murderous population. The unit was filled with the worst of the worst: rapists, gang members, mental health inmates, death row inmates, and at one time, even a cluster of 60 juvenile inmates that were illegally housed in a cluster designated as Charlie Cluster. It was a fucking madhouse. The convicts verbally advised all officers constantly that if the secure doors were ever opened by accident, any officer present would be assaulted immediately. The inmates had declared war. The officers, or so I am told, adapted. Secretly, the officers formed a pact with one another that if any one of them were ever attacked by these convicts who had clearly declared war, they would in turn take the threat seriously and would beat the ever-living shit out of any inmate who ever dared lay hands upon any member of the group. The story goes on to say that they secretly named the group the Hunting Lodge. Word got around to the inmate population, and when the officers honored the pact, the convicts backed the fuck down. Apparently, pain makes believers. So, exactly what is a fair fight in ADCRR presently as this war stands? The answer is simple. If the fight is prearranged, as in a forced cell entry team, then a fair fight is one convict against 5 gunslingers. And if you are ever fortunate enough to participate in this scenario, remember this. A forced cell team entry is exactly like an ambush. You enter the area like hellhounds unleashed and decimate whatever the fuck the threat is. If the fight, however, is spontaneous and you find yourself in troubled waters, then remember this also. Fight back with whatever you have at hand, being that a radio, mini flashlight, or a fucking clipboard. You fight back. And you do so with speed and extreme violence because we are at war, like it or not.